Phil, welcome back to the program. It's good to see you. I understand that Putin has launched what may be the biggest blitz of the war while he was in China. Suck it up to Xi.
Well, yeah. I mean, the entire encounter became in Xi, and the event that happened in that Beijing was obviously orchestrated to kind of disregard, in particular, Western interests and their kind of support of Ukraine, and in particular, the United States, not least of which because Donald Trump has done this whole thing of like, oh, I'm going to give him 2 weeks, and then nothing.
It seems to me, I wrote an op-ed about it this morning, and it was my opening rant on the program, in fact, that Donald Trump is incredibly weak right now. I mean, he has all this bluster, he's deporting people and imprisoning people, and he just killed 11 Venezuelans and all stuff that kind of looks tough. But at the core of it, he's deeply and profoundly unpopular. He's very weak. He's lost, I believe, 8 court cases in the last week. He's been, ridiculed in the media. And I think his weakness is being read by Putin and Xi, and now by Modi, the president or prime minister of India. And these guys are getting together and forming a new axis, a new axis of countries that don't believe in democracy. And I had always figured that Trump would try to join that axis, but they didn't invite him, and he's acting like a high school girl who didn't get invited to the prom or something. I mean, or a boy for that matter, I suppose. But he's just this whiny little thing. And I'm concerned that this is empowering Putin with regard to Ukraine. It's empowering Xi with regard to Taiwan. And that if either of these guys or both of these guys significantly overstep because of this perceived weakness of Trump, we could be looking at World War III. What do you think?
Well, one of the problems I think that's happening is that America doesn't have a status anymore. It doesn't have a stated position. Doesn't have a goal, and so.
You mean like we're no longer defending democracy around the world?
Yeah, in short, and so what does that mean for an executive branch of the United States of America that doesn't have a clear a position, that doesn't stand for something, quite frankly? And because of that, you have these other major global powers that are in essence doing whatever they want because they don't know there is a deterrence to what they do. So we are cast adrift, and so as we are cast adrift, the democratic powers, and that is to say Europe and the other liberal democracies, Korea and Japan, they don't have somebody to whom they can turn to and say they'll back us. And so all of these despots, these powers that and I'm not an Asia expert. I'm looking at this from a perspective of Europe in particular, but I think it extends to this. Is if America isn't going to back us, then we can do whatever the heck we want, and that as a lack of leadership, a vacuum that Trump's administration does in a foreign policy position allows for people to pursue interests that are just based on power politics.
And antithetical to world peace.
Right. And I'm big, you're strong. I'm big, I'm strong, you're small, you're ineffectual, and so we can do what we want.
Right.
And that's not the kind of world order that was developed after the Second World War, in particular because of America's participation in that perception of a world order has gone out the window, and that's down to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that you could argue that America as the arsenal of democracy, which was a popular phrase after World War II, dates back to the Monroe Doctrine in some ways. And I'm not a big fan of the Monroe Doctrine, but where in the 1830s we basically said, or the late 1820s, we basically said that all of the Americas is the sphere of influence of the United States, but it has, and it hasn't always worked out well, obviously. But this idea that countries the size of Taiwan or Japan, Japan's much larger, 100 million people, but smaller countries didn't feel the need to completely arm themselves because the United States was always there. And now you've got European countries that are pushing, 3, 4, 5% of GDP for military spending. We're routinely way above that, I believe. But this has got to have a lot of other countries freaked out looking at what's going on in Ukraine. By the way, what is going on in Ukraine? It's been a week since we talked. The last time we talked, you guys had just suffered through one of the worst bombardments of the war.
Well, I mean, there's an offensive, counteroffensive action going on out in the east near a town called Pokrovsk. But we look, as we have discussed in our previous conversations here, none of this, whatever the advantages on the battlefield are for Russia or the disadvantages for Ukraine, it still remains the fact that the Russians, they get some kilometers here or there, but strategically, when we're looking at the major overwhelming design of the Kremlin, they are nowhere near what they need to do to actually claim, and I don't like the word victory or success, but I mean, like, they're fighting for territory that does not actually change the geopolitical status of what Russia has tried to do, what Moscow has tried to achieve in this war, and they're nowhere near gaining that objective. And it's just Russians and Ukrainians killing themselves for, very little actual gain. I mean, the Ukrainians are defending their homeland. They're fighting the advantages of the Russians, but the Russians need to get Odessa and they need to get Kiev, and they're nowhere near getting those things. Yeah. So on the battlefield as it is, there are incremental gains that the Russians are making, but they are nowhere near what they need to do, which is to actually take command of this country and take command of the Black Sea. And that's that's months and months away from actually happening, and, hundreds of thousands potentially of more dead before that happens. Russia is not winning this war.
No, I totally get it. And it's devastating their economy. And I think that's one of the reasons why Putin was so excited about, hanging out with Xi and Kim and all these other guys who can help him out. Last week when you and I talked, I mentioned that Lev Parnas, the guy who used to work for Trump, who was born in Ukraine, who speaks Ukrainian and Russian and English, and who Trump had sent over to Ukraine to try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden back during his first presidency. Lev has, turned against Trump. And he pointed out that the Russian strategy, and he said he knows this from inside information, inside Russia information. The Russian strategy is going to be that between now and the beginning of winter, over the next 2 months or so, they're going to utterly destroy the electricity and gas infrastructure, fossil fuel infrastructure of Ukraine, so that when winter comes, people will basically be freezing to death, and then Donald Trump will swoop in and negotiate a peace and get the Nobel Peace Prize for it. At least this is what Donald Trump thinks he's going to do. And that he has talked to Putin about this, according to Lev Parnas. When I brought this up with you last week, you were like, yeah, it could be. Further thoughts on that?
No, still the same. I mean, they absolutely can try to do that. And with an America that is no longer, I mean, you can say what you want about Ambassador Brink, who was the former ambassador here. She did an awful lot of work towards providing replacement, substations that you can use to, if one substation gets hit, you can have a mobile substation that can be brought in to provide connections for the electrical grid. Even if, say, Donald Trump doesn't do that, doesn't supply those electrical stopgap needs that we have done in the previous years, I still think that Ukrainians will find a way around the
hope
damage
so.
that they'll do.
Let's hope so.
Well, they need to. They need to.
Yeah, they have to.
So they have to. So, and I think they're planning for
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the great Phil Ittner. Check out his On the Edge podcast. You can also find his video blog over on YouTube, Philip Ittner, Philipittner. Thank you, Phil.
All right. Always good talking to you, Tom.
Thank you, Phil.